Caleb Turner had lived most of his life on horseback. People often said he was born with dust on his boots and the wide sky above his head. He moved from town to town across the warm lands of New Mexico, helping on ranches when they needed an extra hand, fixing fences, guiding cattle, or riding out to check the open range. He never stayed in one place for too long. Somehow, the road always called him again, and he listened. On a late afternoon filled with soft orange light, Caleb was riding through a long, quiet canyon. The wind moved gently through the rocks, making them whisper. His horse, a calm brown mare named Willow, stepped carefully along the narrow path. Caleb enjoyed the peace of it all, the stillness, the warm sun, the way the world felt untouched. But the quiet broke suddenly. At first, Caleb thought he heard only an echo or a bird call. Then he heard it again, quick, sharp voices, carrying across the canyon walls. Someone sounded distressed. Willow stopped on her own, ears turning forward, sensing something unusual. Caleb held the reins lightly while listening again. A few moments passed, filled only with the rustle of dry grass and the call of distant hawks. But then, a new sound drifted through the air. Someone calling for help. Caleb could never ignore a voice like that. Even though he lived a wandering, private life, he had a strong sense of right and wrong. If someone needed assistance, he would not ride away. He touched Willow's neck and spoke softly to calm her. "Easy, girl. We'll take it slow." He guided her forward, moving toward the sound. As he followed the path, the canyon began to widen. Large rocks stood around like silent guards. Caleb rode between them carefully, trying to stay quiet so he could understand what he was riding into. He soon heard more voices, rough, hurried voices that didn't sound kind. They spoke with impatience, their tones sharp like dry sticks snapping. Then, he saw her. A young Apache woman stood near a high rock ledge, clearly cornered. She did not cry or panic, but there was tension in her eyes, and she stood with the alert strength of someone who refused to give in. 3 men, strangers, not from her tribe, stood around her in a loose circle. They weren't touching her, but their behavior showed they wanted something from her, something she did not wish to give. Caleb stayed very still for a moment, watching the scene. He understood immediately that she was alone and needed help. She stood tall, but no person could deal with 3 pushy men all at once. Caleb nudged Willow forward until the men noticed him. When they turned, their expressions quickly shifted, first surprise, then annoyance. Caleb remained calm and steady in the saddle. "I think the lady would like some space," he said in a polite but firm voice. The men exchanged looks. They did not seem pleased to see him, and they clearly did not want to leave. Caleb kept his face relaxed, though inside, he was preparing himself mentally. He did not want a conflict. He never looked for trouble in his life. But if someone needed support, he would stand by them. He guided Willow a little closer so he could speak gently toward the young woman. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She did not understand all his words, but she understood his tone. Her eyes softened, just slightly. She gave a small nod, more of a sign that she appreciated his presence rather than a claim that everything was fine. Caleb then looked back at the men. "I think it's best if you head on your way," he said calmly. They muttered among themselves. One of them laughed under his breath. Another took a step toward Caleb, as if testing him. Caleb didn't move. He had learned long ago that calm confidence spoke louder than loud words. The men seemed to realize that Caleb would not leave, and that he wasn't afraid. After a long and uncomfortable moment, they backed off, not because they wanted to, but because they understood they wouldn't gain anything by staying. They drifted away down the canyon path, still muttering as they disappeared into the rocky shadows. Once they were gone, Caleb let out a small breath. He didn't want to show any sign of tension in front of the young woman. But truthfully, he felt relieved. The situation had ended without any real trouble. He turned to her fully now. "You're safe," he said. lowering his voice to something soft and friendly. You can relax. She watched him carefully, studying his face, his posture, even his horse. She did not step away from the rock yet, perhaps still deciding if she could trust him. Caleb dismounted slowly, showing he meant no harm, and held Willow's reins loosely. The young woman spoke a few words in Apache, but Caleb didn't understand. She tried English next, though her accent was strong. You help me. Yes, Caleb said with a gentle smile. I did. She looked him over again with thoughtful eyes. She seemed strong, proud, and used to taking care of herself. And yet, she had been alone. And 3 men approaching her at once must have been an uneasy moment. Even if she had not shown fear, she had certainly felt the pressure of the situation. After a moment, she stepped closer. She pointed to her chest and said, Nalin. Her name. Caleb nodded kindly. I'm Caleb Turner. She repeated his name softly, trying to form the sounds correctly. Caleb Turner. He smiled. Close enough. She tilted her head, a gesture almost curious, or even grateful. It was clear she wanted to leave the canyon. Caleb had already decided he would accompany her until she reached safer ground. Do you know the way back to your people? He asked gently. She nodded, then pointed toward the far end of the canyon where the land slowly rose into hills. Village. That way. All right, Caleb said. I'll walk with you, just to make sure you're all right. Nalin didn't refuse. She didn't know him well, but she could see his sincerity. She stepped forward confidently, walking ahead of him with light, sure steps. Caleb led Willow behind them. The canyon slowly opened into wider land, filled with golden grass and low shrubs. A gentle breeze carried the scent of warm earth. For a long time, they walked without speaking. Caleb did not want to overwhelm her with questions, and Nalin seemed to be in her own thoughts. But every so often, she would glance at him, just a quick look, as if checking that he was still there. Finally, she broke the silence. Why you help me? Caleb thought for a moment before answering. Because you needed help, he said simply. And because it was the right thing to do. She considered his answer carefully, then nodded once, slowly. She seemed to approve. As they walked, the sky began to change. The sun lowered toward the mountains, turning everything red and gold. The 2 of them walked through the warm colors, like figures in an old story no one had written yet. Even Willow seemed to enjoy the quiet pace, flicking her tail softly and occasionally stopping to sniff the breeze. The land around them grew peaceful again. Birds returned to the air. The earlier tension felt far away now. Nalin's shoulders gradually relaxed, and the sharpness in her expression softened. After a while, she spoke again, her voice calm. You are good man. Caleb felt a small warmth in his chest. He wasn't used to compliments. I try to be, he answered. Nalin didn't smile, but her eyes showed something warmer. Respect. Maybe gratitude. Maybe something else. Neither of them yet understood. The simple silence that followed was not awkward. It felt natural, peaceful. 2 strangers walking together because the world had decided their paths should cross. And neither of them knew yet how deeply that moment would change their lives. The sun lowered slowly behind the hills as Caleb and Nalin continued walking, and the sky turned soft purple with a hint of pink around the clouds. The long shadows stretched across the quiet land, and the evening air felt cooler and gentler. Caleb walked beside Willow, letting the mare rest after a long day. Nalin walked a few steps ahead, her posture straight and confident, as if the land itself recognized her as one of its own people. Even though they had met only a short time ago, the silence between them felt comfortable. Each step echoed softly in the stillness, and sometimes a bird's call or the rustle of a small animal in the bushes broke the quiet. Caleb kept a respectful distance, giving Nalin space, but staying close enough to protect her if needed. He admired the courage she showed earlier. She had been trapped, yet she stood proud, with her chin raised and her eyes sharp. After a long stretch of peaceful silence, Nalin slowed her steps and pointed to the horizon. "My village, beyond those trees," she said, in simple English. Her voice carried a mix of hope and sadness, as if she was relieved to return home but thinking about what had happened earlier. Caleb nodded. "We'll reach there soon." Nalin turned her head slightly, giving him a curious look. Caleb scratched the back of his neck. He hadn't planned to go all the way into Apache land. He never wanted to disrespect their space. Many tribes didn't like outsiders entering their village, and he understood why. But he looked at Nalin tired, still alert, and still recovering from the fear she didn't show, and he knew he couldn't leave her until she truly felt safe. "I'll walk with you until you're close enough," he replied kindly. "You shouldn't go alone now." She studied him again, as if weighing his words, and then nodded in silent agreement. They walked quietly until they reached a small creek. The water shimmered with the colors of the sunset. Caleb knelt to let Willow drink, and Nalin knelt beside him, scooping water in her hands. She washed her face gently, brushing away the dust of the day. Her long, dark braids fell over her shoulders, and the water left her skin glowing in the faint evening light. She sat back and looked at Caleb with thoughtful eyes. "You far from your people?" she asked. Caleb smiled a little. "I don't have a people," he said honestly. "I travel. I work where I'm needed. Mostly, it's just me and Willow." Nalin listened carefully, her eyes narrowing just slightly, her way of showing interest. "Why you walk alone?" she asked softly. Caleb thought for a moment. "Maybe because the world feels big," he said. "And I guess I never found a place that felt like home." Nalin dipped her fingers in the water again, letting it ripple around her hand. "Home is not place," she said slowly, searching for the right English words. "Home is heart place." Caleb felt the truth of her words. He had never thought about it that way. Maybe you're right." She looked at him with a gentle seriousness. "You help me. You stay with me. You walk with me. That is heart work." Caleb felt a warmth he didn't expect. He cleared his throat, unsure how to respond. Before he could find the right words, Nalin stood up again. "We go," she said softly. They continued walking, and the stars slowly appeared in the sky. The land around them began to glow, with silver moonlight. Crickets filled the air, with their soft, nighttime music. Nalin walked with more confidence now, as if each step brought her closer to strength and safety again. Caleb stayed alert, not wanting anything unexpected to happen on the road. After some time, Nalin spoke again. "My people, they see you. They think you stranger." Caleb nodded. He already expected that. "I understand," he said. Nalin stopped walking for a moment and looked directly at him. "You know trouble," she said firmly. Caleb felt a slow, steady warmth spread across his chest again. He didn't know how to describe the feeling, but it was something between gratitude and pride. As they walked further, the land began to change. The trees grew taller, and the path felt more defined, as if many feet had walked it before them. Caleb noticed Nalin's steps grow lighter and faster. She was close to home. Suddenly, she stopped again and turned to him with an expression he couldn't immediately read. It wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. It was something deep and ancient, something meaningful. "Caleb Turner," she began, speaking his name carefully. "You save me. You help me. In my people, when persons save life, life is tied." She touched her chest gently, then pointed to him. Caleb blinked in surprise, not fully understanding. "Tied?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Yes, life tied, heart tied." Caleb's heart beat a little faster. "What does that mean for you?" he asked. Nalin took a deep breath. In my tribe, when woman is saved, she choose man who help her. She give respect. She give loyalty. She give future. She paused, then held his gaze. She say, you are husband. Caleb froze. For a moment, the world around him felt completely still. The trees, the wind, the stars, everything seemed to stop moving. He stared at her. Not out of fear, but out of surprise so deep he didn't know what to do with it. Nalin, he started, his voice softer than he expected. I didn't help you for something in return. I know, she said calmly. That is why heart choose. Caleb swallowed slowly. He respected her culture deeply, but he had never imagined he would be part of such a serious tradition. He wasn't the kind of man who thought about marriage. He had spent his life wandering alone, with no roots, no promises, no commitments. But now, here he stood in the moonlit forest, with a woman who looked at him with complete trust and sincerity. She wasn't forcing him. Her voice wasn't demanding. It was calm, steady, honest. You are good man, she said gently. My life safe because you. So, you are husband now. Now. Caleb didn't know what to say. His thoughts spun in circles. Stay? Go? Accept? Refuse? He didn't want to hurt her. He didn't want to disrespect her traditions. But he also didn't know if he belonged in a world he didn't understand. Finally, he spoke in a soft voice. Nalin, I am honored. Truly. But I don't know your ways. I don't know your language. I don't want to do something wrong. She stepped closer and touched her hand lightly to his arm. It was a gentle, steady gesture. You learn, she said simply. I teach. Caleb looked down at her hand, then at her face. Her eyes were calm, deep, full of quiet certainty. Something inside him softened. Something inside him opened. Maybe he had been alone too long. Maybe he had been waiting for something he didn't even know he needed. Maybe this moment, strange and unexpected as it was part of a story bigger than the life he had lived until now. Nalin slowly lowered her hand and stepped back. We close to village, she whispered. When we go in, I tell elders. Caleb felt his breath catch again. Tell them what? She met his eyes, her voice steady and sure. That you are my husband now. And with those words, their world changed forever. The moon shone brightly above the quiet land as Caleb followed Nalin toward her village. The path grew smoother, showing signs of many feet that had walked it before children, families, elders, hunters. The trees around them whispered softly in the night wind. Caleb felt a strange heaviness in his chest. It wasn't fear. It was something unfamiliar, something he couldn't name. Maybe it was the feeling that his life was changing faster than he could understand. Nalin walked with confidence now. Every step she took was sure, as if the earth itself welcomed her home. Caleb watched her from behind, noticing how differently she carried herself now compared to earlier when she was trapped. It was like watching a bird return to its nest after a long, worrying journey. After some time, lights appeared in the distance. Soft, warm lights, glowing from small fires, placed carefully around open huts made of wood and tall sticks. The glow felt peaceful. Caleb had never been inside an Apache village before, and he didn't know what to expect. He just hoped he wouldn't bring any trouble. When they reached the edge of the village, Nalin stopped and turned to him. Her face was calm, but her eyes were serious. Stay close, she told him softly. My people protect their own. They do not like strangers coming suddenly. Caleb nodded. I understand. I'll follow your lead. As they stepped inside the open circle of the village, a few people noticed them right away. Some murmured in surprise when they saw Nalin. as if they weren't expecting her to return that night. A group of children paused in their play and stared curiously at Caleb, their eyes wide and bright. Nalin spoke to them in her own language. Caleb watched her hands move as she explained something. The children's expressions shifted from curiosity to excitement, and they ran into the village, calling out to the adults. Within moments, the quiet night turned lively. People came out of their homes, walking toward them with interest and concern. Some looked relieved to see Nalin, rushing to touch her shoulders, her arms, making sure she was unharmed. Caleb stepped back a little, giving her space. Then, the mood changed. Someone noticed Caleb, the tall cowboy with dusty boots, unusual clothes, and gentle eyes. A few villagers frowned, unsure of who he was. Others whispered to each other, surprised to see an outsider. Nalin raised her hand, signaling them to listen. She began speaking quickly in Apache, explaining what had happened. Her voice was calm, but strong, carrying across the open space. Caleb didn't understand the words, but he watched the villagers' faces change as they listened. Some looked shocked. Some looked thoughtful. Some looked confused. And then Nalin said something that made the entire gathering fall silent. She pointed to Caleb. She spoke again, slowly and clearly, as if her words were important. The villagers stared at him, their expressions unreadable. Caleb felt his heart beat louder. He didn't know what she had just told them, but he had a good guess, and that guess made his throat dry. At last, an older man stepped forward. His long hair was tied behind his back, and his deep-set eyes held years of wisdom. His face was calm, but he studied Caleb with quiet intensity. He spoke a few words to Nalin, and she answered respectfully. Then the elder turned to Caleb. "Welcome," the elder said slowly in accented English. "You are guest. Nalin, she says, you helped her." Caleb nodded respectfully. "Yes, sir. She needed help, and I did what anyone should do." The elder nodded thoughtfully, then gave a small smile. "Good heart. Good action." Caleb felt a wave of relief. But that relief didn't last long, because the elder's expression shifted again this time, to something more serious. "Nalin also says," he continued gently, "that you are chosen. She says, you are husband." Caleb felt the weight of the moment sink into him like a stone dropping into deep water. The villagers watched him closely. Some seemed curious, some surprised, others unsure. Caleb swallowed, searching for the right words. "I didn't expect that," he said softly. "I respect her, but I don't want to cause trouble or misunderstand anything." The elder looked at Nalin, then back at him. "In our way," the elder explained, "when a woman chooses a man for saving her life, it is not small thing. It means trust. It means future. But," he paused thoughtfully, "it must also be your choice. Both hearts must agree." Caleb felt something warm at those words. It gave him space to breathe. She looked up at Caleb with steady eyes. "I choose," she said softly. "I tell elders because truth is truth." Her eyes held something deep, not pressure, not force, but sincerity. She wasn't demanding. She was simply stating her belief. Caleb took a slow breath. "Nalin, I care about your safety. I respect your ways. I don't want to do something wrong." "You do nothing wrong," she said gently. "I saw your heart today." The villagers watched them silently, waiting for his answer. Before Caleb could speak, someone else stepped out of the crowd, a young man with strong shoulders and a proud stance. His eyes flicked between Nalin and Caleb. Even without words, Caleb could feel the young man's frustration. He approached Nalin and spoke firmly in Apache. She lowered her head respectfully, but shook it gently. The young man frowned deeply, then looked at Caleb. His gaze wasn't angry, but it wasn't friendly either. It held confusion and disappointment emotions Caleb could understand. The elder placed a calming hand on the young man's shoulder. He spoke quiet words to him, and the young man turned away. Caleb felt uncomfortable. He didn't want to be the reason for anyone's pain. Did I take something from him without meaning to? He whispered to Nalin. She shook her head. He wanted future with me, but I did not choose him. Even before today. Her voice was calm. Not your fault. Caleb nodded slowly, grateful for the clarity. The villagers eventually stepped back, giving Caleb and Nalin space. A woman approached and offered Nalin a warm shawl. Another person handed Caleb a bowl of warm herbal tea. He accepted it gratefully, holding it with both hands as the heat seeped into his fingers. As people returned to their homes, the elder stayed. He sat down on a wooden bench and motioned for them to sit as well. You are stranger. But your heart is known, the elder said kindly. You helped one of ours. That is respected. But joining our family, joining our people, that is big path. Caleb nodded. I understand. The elder smiled a little. We do not decide tonight. Tomorrow, we speak more. Tonight, you rest. You are safe here. Nalin touched Caleb's arm lightly, guiding him toward a sheltered area where visitors sometimes stayed. You sleep here, she said softly. Close, but not inside village. This is our way for new ones. Caleb nodded. Thank you, Nalin. Before she left, she looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were warm in the moonlight. Sleep well, she said softly. Tomorrow, we see where our story goes. Dream. Caleb watched her walk away, her silhouette graceful under the starry sky. As he lay down to rest, he stared up at the moon, thinking about the strange and unexpected turn his life had taken. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring: challenges, acceptance, confusion, or understanding. But one thing was certain. His journey was no longer a lonely one. The next morning came softly, with golden sunlight spreading slowly across the village. Birds began singing in the nearby trees, their voices bright and cheerful. Caleb woke to the calm sounds of the new day. For a moment, he forgot where he was. But when he opened his eyes and saw the wooden posts of the shelter around him, and the gentle smoke rising from cooking fires in the distance, he remembered everything. This wasn't just another stop on his long journey. This place felt different. As he sat up, Willow nudged him gently with her nose, as if reminding him she was hungry. Caleb laughed quietly and stood to feed her some dried corn from his saddlebag. There you go, girl, he whispered. You've done a lot too. Before long, Nalin appeared, walking toward him with a calm smile. She carried a wooden bowl filled with warm food, roasted corn, beans, and soft bread. For you, she said kindly. Caleb accepted it with gratitude. Thank you, Nalin. She sat beside him on the ground. For a moment, they watched the village wake up. Women gathered water from clay pots, children chased each other playfully, and elders sat together speaking softly as the sun climbed higher. Nalin's voice broke the peaceful silence. Caleb nodded, feeling a nervous flutter in his chest. I'm ready, he said, though he wasn't sure he truly was. Still, he wanted to honor her people. Before they could continue the conversation, the sound of hurried footsteps reached them. A young boy rushed into the open area, breathing quickly. He called to Nalin in their language, pointing toward the forest. His words tumbled out with worry. Nalin stood quickly. Caleb rose too, confused. What's wrong? Caleb asked. Nalin listened to the boy carefully, then turned to Caleb with a serious expression. People in forest, she said. Strangers. Moving around. Not from our tribe. Caleb felt a familiar heaviness in his stomach. He didn't want to assume anything bad. But he also remembered the unfriendly men from yesterday. They might just be travelers, he said gently, not wanting to frighten her. Maybe, Nalin replied. though her eyes remained thoughtful. But they walk in circles. They watch. Caleb understood her concern. People who meant well usually walked openly, not hiding in the trees. But he couldn't jump to conclusions that would go against his peaceful nature. "Nalin," he said softly, "let's not worry yet. Maybe they are lost. Maybe they need help." She looked at him, then slowly nodded. "We be careful," she said. "That is our way." Together, they walked to the village center, where the elders had already gathered. The elder from last night, the one who had spoken gently with Caleb, stood at the front. His name was Dakota, and he carried himself with quiet wisdom. Nalin spoke first, explaining what the boy had seen. Dakota listened calmly, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. When she finished, he turned to Caleb. "Do you think these strangers come for you?" he asked kindly, not accusingly. Caleb took a slow breath. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "I hope not. But the men yesterday, they didn't seem like the type to let things go easily." Dakota nodded. "We must keep our village safe, but we also do not assume bad things about people we do not know." Caleb felt relief at those words. This was a peaceful community, one that chose understanding before fear. Another elder stepped forward. "We will send a small group to speak with the strangers," she suggested. "Find out their reason. Ask if they need help. If they wish to pass through, we let them." Everyone agreed. Nalin surprised Caleb by stepping forward. "I go," she said. Dakota studied her carefully. "You wish to speak with strangers again so soon?" She lifted her chin. "Yes. My heart brave. I want to help my people." Caleb couldn't help feeling a mix of admiration and concern. "Nalin," he said softly, "you don't have to put yourself in danger." She turned to him with a steady gaze. "I am not afraid," she said, "and I do not go alone." Dakota nodded approvingly. "You may go, Nalin, but Caleb will go with you. You understand the ways of outside people better." Caleb agreed immediately. Of course. They set out together, along with 2 more villagers, an elder woman named Apache, and a calm young man named Kiona. They walked through the quiet forest, listening to the rustling leaves and the distant bird sounds. The air felt peaceful, but there was a faint tension underneath it, like the moment before a storm. After some time, they spotted movement between the trees. Caleb recognized one of the men from the day before, the one who had looked most upset, when Caleb had stepped in to help Nalin. But instead of acting harshly, the men simply stood there, shifting their weight from one foot to another, looking uncertain. That surprised Caleb. If they had come for trouble, they would not be hesitating. Apache stepped forward and spoke politely. "Why are you here?" she asked in a calm voice. "This is our land. We wish to understand your purpose." The men exchanged looks. The leader cleared his throat. We came to apologize," he said awkwardly. Everyone froze in surprise, even Caleb. The man continued, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yesterday, we acted wrong. We were pushy. We didn't listen. When your friend showed up," he nodded toward Caleb, "we realized we had made poor choices." Another man added, "We didn't mean harm. We were just acting foolish. We wanted to make things right." Nalin looked at Caleb in amazement. Caleb himself felt a wave of relief wash through him. He had expected tension, maybe anger, but certainly not an apology. Apache's face softened. "Your words bring peace," she said warmly. "Thank you." The leader nodded. "We'll leave now. We won't bother anyone. Just wanted to say we're sorry." Caleb stepped forward with a small smile. "I appreciate you saying that," he said kindly. "It means a lot." The men nodded respectfully and began walking away, disappearing quietly into the trees. No shouting, no threats, no anger, just a simple, honest ending. When they were gone, Nalin exhaled slowly, as if releasing a heavy burden. I did not expect this, she admitted. Caleb chuckled. Neither did I. But I'm glad it turned out this way. On the walk back, the forest felt much lighter. Birds chirped again. Sunlight danced on the leaves. It was as if nature itself approved of the peaceful solution. When they returned to the village, Dakota listened to the story with a smile of deep relief. The villagers relaxed. Children resumed their play. Women continued their work. The tension that had hovered over the village dissolved like morning fog under the sun. Later that evening, as the sky turned orange and pink again, Nalin walked with Caleb near a quiet stream. The water glowed like molten gold. You did good today, she told him softly. Caleb shook his head. You were the brave one. You stepped forward. You spoke first. Nalin smiled a gentle, real smile that reached her eyes. Caleb felt something warm settle quietly inside him. Something peaceful. Something hopeful. He looked at her, and for the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future one filled with calm mornings, warm fires, shared meals, laughter, and a life built not on fear or conflict, but on trust and gentle strength. A life built beside Nalin. And that night, as the stars filled the sky, their bond felt deeper than ever. The days after the strangers left passed peacefully, like calm water flowing in a quiet river. The village returned to its usual rhythm, children laughing near the stream, women preparing meals together, elders sharing stories under the shade of tall trees. But something in the air felt different, warmer, as if a new chapter was opening for everyone. For Caleb, each morning began with the soft sounds of village life. He would wake to the gentle crackle of fires being lit, the scent of warm bread, and the sight of the sun rising over the hills. Willow, his loyal mare, enjoyed the open fields, and the villagers often brought her small treats, smiling warmly as they did. Nalin visited him every morning. Sometimes she brought food, sometimes she simply came to sit with him, but always with a quiet comfort that felt natural between them. Their conversations were slow and gentle, filled with simple words but deeper meaning. One morning, she sat beside him on a wooden log and watched as the sun climbed higher. Today, she said softly, elders will speak with you again. Caleb nodded. He knew the moment was coming, the moment they would decide whether he could become part of the tribe, part of Nalin's life, part of their future. His heart felt heavy and hopeful at the same time. Before the meeting, Nalin walked with him to a quiet area near the river. The water flowed clear and smooth, reflecting the sky above. Caleb Turner, she said, her voice calm but filled with meaning. You did not come to my people for a home, but maybe home come to you. Caleb looked at her, his eyes soft. I never expected any of this, he admitted. But I feel something here. Something good. Nalin stepped closer, her expression gentle. Whatever elders say today, I stand by my choice. Her words warmed his heart. He nodded slowly. And I respect you, more than words can say. Just then, an elder called for them. It was time. They walked to the center of the village where the elders sat in a circle. The villagers gathered around too, ready to listen. Caleb stood respectfully, his hands resting at his sides, trying to calm the flutter in his chest. Nalin stood close enough for him to feel her presence, like a quiet strength supporting him. Dakota, the elder who had guided many decisions in the village, spoke first. Caleb Turner, he said kindly, you have walked among us with a peaceful heart. You have shown respect. You have not brought trouble. You have helped us keep calm in moments of fear. Another elder nodded. You listen more than you speak. This is good. A third elder added, Nalin trusts you, and trust is not small. Caleb bowed his head slightly. I am honored, he said softly. Dakota looked around the circle, then back at Caleb. "We have talked much," he said, "and we believe this. A good man does not need to be born into a people to become part of them. What matters is his heart." Caleb held his breath. "Nalin has chosen you," Dakota continued. "We accept her choice, and if you choose her too, then you will be welcomed among us." Caleb felt a wave of emotion run through him. He didn't speak right away. He wanted to find the right words that matched the depth of this moment. Finally, he looked at Nalin. She met his gaze steadily, her eyes warm and trusting. Caleb turned back to the elders. "I choose her," he said in a quiet but clear voice. "I don't know all your ways, but I want to learn. I want to honor your traditions, and I want to stand beside Nalin, wherever that leads." Whispers spread gently through the villagers, soft smiles, approving nods, quiet joy. Dakota raised his hand. "Then today, we welcome you. Today, you become part of our family." Nalin stepped forward and placed her hand lightly on Caleb's arm, a simple gesture full of meaning. Her touch felt like an anchor, grounding him in this moment that would shape his life forever. The villagers approached one by one, offering greetings, warm smiles, and small gifts of welcome woven bracelets, carved wooden figures, and simple tokens of acceptance. Caleb felt overwhelmed by the kindness around him. He had spent most of his life wandering, unsure where he belonged. But here, among these people, he felt something he had never felt before: home. Later that afternoon, the village celebrated. There was music made from hand-carved flutes and soft drums, and joyful dances around the fire. Children played happily, and elders shared stories that made people laugh. Nalin showed Caleb how to join their dances, guiding his steps with gentle patience. He stumbled at first, making her laugh, but soon he found his rhythm. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Caleb and Nalin walked away from the dancing circle to a quiet hill overlooking the village. The breeze was cool, and the evening stars began to appear one by one. Nalin sat beside him on the grass. "You happy?" she asked softly. Caleb looked out at the glowing village, then turned to her with a warm smile. "More than I've ever been," he said honestly. She nodded. "I am happy too." For a moment, they simply sat there, listening to the wind and watching the stars. Caleb felt a peace he had never known. Everything that had happened, the unexpected meeting, the choices they made, the challenges they faced, had led to this quiet, gentle moment. He turned to Nalin. "I promise," he said softly, "to always respect your people, and to always respect you." Nalin looked at him with shining eyes. "And I promise to walk with you," she replied, "wherever our path goes." Their hands found each other naturally, without hesitation. It felt like the most simple and perfect thing in the world. That night, the village lights glowed warmly below them, and the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if celebrating their new beginning. In the days and weeks that followed, Caleb learned the ways of Nalin's people. He helped gather wood, learned to weave simple baskets, and joined the men in caring for the horses. Everywhere he went, Willow followed, becoming a favorite among the children. Caleb and Nalin built their life together, with quiet joy, sharing meals, exploring the forest, sitting by the river, and learning more about each other's worlds. Some days were simple, some were busy, but all of them felt full of meaning. And as time passed, Caleb realized something important. He had not just found a place to stay, he had found a life to belong to. A people who welcomed him. A woman who chose him. A future he had never dared to imagine. Nalin's simple words from that first night echoed gently in his heart. "You're my husband now." But now, those words held so much more. They meant love. They meant respect. They meant two hearts choosing the same path, side by side. And under the endless sky of their land, their story continued, peaceful, steady, and full of hope.